It was brutal. I called it mud, blood, and flood. There was much blood. Mr. Cortez had been told which were the breakaways, which were the permanent parts of the set. And they had long-horned steer in there, and human beings, and some dummies. But he put the human beings where the real set was, and the dummies where the breakaway was, because he wanted realism, as he called it.
One of the darkest days for early Hollywood started with a good idea. In the 1920s, biblical epics were doing big business, from the Ten Commandments to the King of Kings. So it was only a logical next step to try to put the story of Noah's Ark on the big screen. The challenge was creating a massive flood using the available filmmaking techniques of the 1920s. Today, a director might turn to CGI, but that obviously wasn't an option for Michael Curtiz when he set out to make his version of Noah's Ark. How would the director show the world being destroyed by floodwaters? The solution that he came up with was so brutal that a cinematographer quit in protest. 2 million liters of water was dumped on a large group of extras, with devastating results. Half a century later, Noah's Ark star Dolores Costello was still haunted by what she saw that day.
I found a man leaning against my dressing room door, which was really an office. And he was heavily bandaged. And I said, "What's wrong?" He said, 38 ambulances have left. I'm in better condition than most of them, and they're coming back for me. And he said, "I think somebody's been killed."
The reckless disregard for human life on the set of Noah's Ark might be shocking, but it was hardly unique. Early film history is full of stories of extras being mistreated, injured, or even killed while making movies. Another notorious scene was the naval battle from 1925's Ben-Hur, where dozens of Italian extras were plunged into the sea when their ship burned faster than expected. Ben-Hur star Francis X. Bushman believed some extras had drowned. He recounted how he'd seen 3 sets of clothing left unclaimed at the end of the day, after the rest of the extras had changed out of their costumes. The climax of the 1923 movie Souls for Sale involves people fleeing a burning circus tent. The scene turned into a real stampede that reportedly left 60 extras injured. While filming his 1915 movie The Captive, director Cecil B. DeMille wanted the realism of bullets hitting a wooden door, so he had his extras firing live rounds on set. For the next scene, they were instructed to unload their guns, but one man failed to do so. When he struck the barrel of his gun on the door, the gun discharged into the head of a man behind him, killing him. DeMille ended up getting some of the unfortunate extra's brains on his jacket. Nonetheless, he insisted on having filming resume the next day as normal. In the silent era, people getting hurt on set was accepted as a price to be paid to achieve greater realism and spectacle. One film magazine compared extras to Roman gladiators, risking their lives to provide entertainment for the masses. Extras play a unique role in the history of cinema. They were often disrespected, but they were vital to the evolution of the art form. The earliest narrative films often feel like theatrical productions performed in front of a camera. Extras were part of what made cinema cinematic. Consider these 2 movies about Julius Caesar, made just 6 years apart. The movie from 1908 feels like a play that has been taken outside. The movie from 1914 feels much more cinematic. An army of extras allows for shots with a scale to match a painting. Italy, where the second movie was made, was a leader in making movies on an epic scale. In the 1910s, movies like Cabiria employed armies of extras and inspired Hollywood filmmakers to follow suit. When D.W. Griffith needed thousands of extras for his 1916 epic Intolerance, he found many of them on Los Angeles' Skid Row. For $1.25 a day and a meal, some of the city's poorest people were willing to dress like ancient Babylonians and engage in battles that often got a bit too realistic. Today, battle scenes in movies are carefully choreographed. But in the silent era, directors would get the camera rolling and then set in motion a bunch of violent chaos. DeMille liked to offer his extras an added incentive to fight harder on screen. On 1916's Joan the Woman, he promised the extras playing the English army a bonus if they could capture Joan. The extras playing the French army were offered the same bonus if they could stop the English. On Intolerance, the fighting got so intense that after one battle scene, 67 extras needed medical treatment. One unfortunate man ended up with an arrow stuck in his head. The movie Babylon is not an entirely realistic depiction of the silent era, but it does offer a sense of what filming a battle scene was like. In the earliest days of cinema, it didn't take much to entertain an audience. The novelty of a moving image was enough. In 1896, just the sight of a train pulling into a station thrilled moviegoers. Less than 20 years later, you had to crash a real train into a river to achieve the same effect. To deliver these bigger thrills on screen, the business of movies had to get bigger. It's important to consider that movies are an industry as well as an art form. And the early decades of the 20th century were a time when many industries were not overly concerned with safety. An American worker in the 1910s was around 30 times more likely to die in a workplace accident than the worker today. Being a movie extra wasn't as dangerous as working at a coal mine, but it was still a job that came with more than its share of hazards. Extras occupy one of the lowest rungs of the movie industry, seen by the studios as easily replaceable. As the writer for Screenland magazine put it, "When one falls on the harvest of realism, hundreds leap up to take his place." Efforts to unionize extras were violently repressed. Studio-friendly newspapers mocked extras as being unwilling to do real work. A magazine article titled "Why Cry Over Extras" captured the sentiment of many in the industry. The author called movie extras weak beings, choosing a futile existence because it requires little effort. Conditions could be even worse outside of Hollywood. If you've noticed that the workers in Metropolis look convincingly downtrodden, that's because the movie was filmed at a time of great economic crisis in Germany. Director Fritz Lang had no problem finding dozens of gaunt-looking children, or people desperate enough to spend hours standing in cold water while he filmed them. In Italy, an extra was mauled to death by a lion during filming of the 1924 version of Quo Vadis. Before coming to Hollywood, Michael Curtiz had already developed his fixation with realism. While filming 1922's Sodom und Gomorrah in Austria, he had 20 ambulances on set for the climax of the movie. Those ambulances were needed, as explosions left extras injured, or by some accounts dead. At least in Austria, Curtiz faced criminal charges for his reckless disregard for safety, though he avoided prison and escaped with a fine paid by his production company. So why would anyone want to be a silent movie extra? Certainly some took the work out of desperation, but others were drawn to the glamour of the industry and dreams of stardom. Perhaps no one embodied that dream better than Harold Lloyd, who started out as an extra in 1913 and worked his way up to being one of Hollywood's biggest stars, eventually earning $40,000 a week. One of the extras on Noah's Ark would follow a similar path. He was a former college football player named Marion Morrison, who was later much better known under his stage name John Wayne. In the silent era, filming things practically was sometimes the only option. The actors in Wings flew their own planes because there was no convincing way to fake in-flight footage in 1927. Tom Cruise flew in an F-18 while filming Top Gun Maverick, but that's more of a creative choice. CGI could have let him film those scenes without leaving the ground. Curtiz obviously couldn't have used CGI to create his flood for Noah's Ark, but there were some surprisingly good visual effects available at the time. Just look at this scene from the Johnstown flood, released 2 years before Noah's Ark. No one here is at risk of drowning, thanks to some clever camera techniques that combined footage of the extras with a scaled-down version of the flood. Considering that these shots are almost 100 years old, they look pretty good. Maybe not as realistic as footage of people having water dumped on them. But I don't think the added realism is worth risking human lives to achieve. Curtiz was a great director. He made Casablanca among many other classic films, but at times he pursued his art with a reckless disregard for life. He directed 2 different biblical epics where extras were seriously injured or possibly killed. His 1936 movie The Charge of the Light Brigade inflicted so much carnage on horses that Hollywood was forced to adopt new animal safety rules. The directing methods of Curtiz wouldn't fly today. But finding a balance between safety and realism is something Hollywood is still grappling with. The tragic death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of Rust has led to some filmmakers abandoning the use of real firearms when making movies. When gunshots can be added in with visual effects, there's no need to fire even blanks on set. Thanks to CGI, you no longer need thousands of extras to bring an army to life on screen. These digital extras can be placed into situations that are too dangerous for a real person. As with other workers, conditions are generally much safer for movie extras today than they were 100 years ago. But in other areas of the entertainment industry, like reality television, it's still easy to find examples of people being injured for our amusement. Society has come a long way in 100 years, but maybe not quite as far as we might hope.